Hello and welcome back to the RWBY podcast. I am your host, the blank devil. I couldn't think of something that was actually funny. Uh, Nor do I ever actually come up with anything funny. People just kind of laugh at what I say anyway. I am Mediocrity 4.
Hey yo, pass the wizard read, herbalist. This shit's fire. Ugh, I'm high powered. Ugh.
And I don't know if it's because the last two episodes have actually been decent, or because I forgot that last season I actually kind of wanted Sad Rupee this season, and I've been a completely unreliable narrator these past three podcasts. But I'm starting to like this volume. I'm dude.
I just like Reese's. Think they're a pretty good chocolate thing with some peanut butter in there. Think that's probably the way to go.
Gotta eat 'em up. Eat 'em up.
Yeah,
Eat 'em up. Eat 'em up.
obviously. But yes, I am Coop.
God, I remember when we first started doing this, I was like freaking addicted to Reese's Puffs. I would just shove a handful in my mouth as we were recording the podcast. That was back in like the volume 5 days. Um so
Well,
yeah,
I mean, interestingly enough, like back in 2015-ish, around those eras, that was when they first discovered that Reese's Puffs is actually laced with cocaine. Very similar marketing scheme to the original Coke one. Uh,
No joke. I would be very interested in a old school Coca-Cola with the cocaine in it. Would be very. I would drink it. I wouldn't even think twice about it.
I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference at this point. I've drank so much soda in the past.
hmm.
Uh but yeah, so RWBY Volume 9 Episode 4. I really like this episode too. I am here for it. I am a sucker for these sort of like over the top operatic character development speeches, and we got like three of them in a row all at once. Like it was like a mediagasm overload for me. But that happened in
Yeah.
the second half of the episode.
They did a decent job.
Oh yeah. Well, like it's definitely doubling down on the whole sad girl Ruby bit, which my only concern with sad girl Ruby is they're gonna like flub the execution on it. They're not gonna be able to stick the landing is my only real concern. But I do like the fact that Weiss, Blake, and Yang like definitely know what like they're very like rock solid in their purpose right now. I do think we definitely dodged the curious cat becoming the like a crow figure because he's just like an unreliable tour guide.
Yeah, he's
And,
kind of an unhelpful dick, not unlike the Cheshire Cat in Wonderland.
Yeah, I was very happy about that. They basically have confirmed that the Curious Cat, while he will kind of guide them, he's not going to do everything for them, and I'm very.
Yeah,
The characters still have agency and all of that, so that's really good. I also like them making fun of themselves. I know that self-awareness does not equal quality, but you know what? It's still at least kind of satisfying, and that means they at least want to fix certain things that they suck at writing. I don't know why they didn't make fun of how badly they handled Renora and Ironwood, but you know what? Some at least they're acknowledging some bullshit they've pulled in the past.
so that
Well,
actually
hold on.
that actually kind of makes me like it a little more because it is lampshading, and I am typically against lampshading, but it is something that a lot of writers do. It's whatever, but the lampshading examples in this episode were like very just missed writing opportunities. Like it's stuff that could have maybe actually happened in between the scenes. Like, they bring up CL. And the reason why they bring up CL specifically, I keep hearing that it's because of Murder of Birds. I don't watch Murder of Birds content. I cannot confirm nor deny that, but I do know because I actually had the because I had the Blu-ray. Oh yeah, he's still big. He's still big and stuff. Because I had the Blu-ray for Volume 3 when it came out. So CL was in Volume 3. That's when she was introduced and stuff. And in the commentary for Volume 3, Miles said something to the effect of, I cannot wait to get into this character's backstory and have them return. And then she never did. And they never did. And so that became like a running joke amongst several like RWBY tubers and stuff, most of which I'm not really associated with. But that is why the Curious Cat picked that example in particular, because it is something that like was originally in the playbooks to do at some point, and then it just got cut.
A bit of breaking the fourth wall, as they would say, or is it the third wall? I don't know which wall is being broken, but someone's gonna have to do some drywall work later.
Yeah, so I mean, like, this isn't like a self-critique kind of self-awareness, basically, is what you're saying here, is that it's more like they're just kind of like playing up all their other stuff that they were already going to do, as if like, oh yeah, that would have been a good idea too. But it doesn't really, it's not cutting at anything that was previously said. It's just like being like, oh, what about this as well? This would have also been cool. Basically, just a sidelong self-compliment, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, and that bit of lampshading is kind of sandwiched in between, like just some very, oh man, those gods, they sure had a god complex because they're gods.
That's not even a complex at that point. You're just no, you are what you are, man. It's like saying Napoleon had a Napoleon complex.
Yeah, that is a little redundant, but so it isn't like trying to do damage control. Like, it's not trying to retcon anything or like make excuses for the bad writing. It's just like they brought up, apparently, when as they were telling the Curious Cat about the last 8 volumes of RWBY, they brought up CL once and then didn't bring her up again because she wasn't really brought up again. So like that's it's kind of neat. It's still kind of cringe in my opinion, but that's just me being against lampshading in general. Like, this is not a bad example of lampshading. This isn't lampshading done wrong. This is just lampshading being done, period.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know about. Actually, let me look that up. I kind of want to look up like the exact definition of lampshading, because I wonder if that even like this even really fits into it exactly, because I haven't thought about it for a little bit.
OSP recently did a video on lampshading.
I haven't watched them for a while. I recently purged like all of my stuff and of things, because I forget what it was. They went for like a little while without putting out anything, and I was like, do I really even watch them? Like, nah, I mostly just listen to music.
They're one of like 3 or 4 channels that I still watch with anything approaching regularity. I kind of purged a lot of my follows and stuff too.
Oh no, my subscriptions just keep piling up on my YouTube feed, so I'm just like, whatever.
Okay, so this was this, like, it says here on the definition of it that it's used to denote something that threatens the audience's willing suspension of disbelief. First off, I don't think the absence of CL or the idea that the gods were kind of weird threatens the willing suspension of disbelief. Because first off, if you're watching RWBY and you don't know that it's already pretty like out there, you've probably got the highest suspension of disbelief of anybody ever to live.
Yeah,
That's like,
RWBY does require a lot of a lot of that.
yeah. So I don't think this technically applies as a lampshade here. I think we've just had an entire conversation about a thing that wasn't even the thing we thought it was.
Well, I didn't even call it lampshading, if you remember. Just saying.
I'm not talking to you, dude. I'm deliberately talking to media here.
You guys took my correct point and turned it into an incorrect point.
I was trying to be passive aggressive, like a woman, and you come along and ruin it. Thanks.
Now you see, now Coop has to say, it's like, why don't you get into a car accident?
I'm
Well,
deliberately
it's raining
wondering
in
why.
Southern California right now, so there's a good chance of that.
Oh God, yeah, those roads are. Yeah.
So yeah,
And that's a PSA to always make sure to have your tires properly aired up and rotated, and also know how much tread life you have on them. This is a high-powered PSA.
yep. So while the curious cat is getting all distracted with butterflies, there's a joke here that you liked, dude.
I did. The first time RWBY has made me seriously laugh in as long as I can remember. Although it's been a while because it's been a while since the last season, but I actually thought this was funny because of how hard they committed to the goofiness of this joke because of how bad it all was. And I think they knew it was bad. That's what kind of made it funny.
Yeah,
When it was like what wife calls the cat like was the constantly annoying cat or something like that.
yeah, the consistently annoying cat, and then Yang
Yeah.
says, "Ooh, got him," and then Weiss says, "Thank you," because Yang was being sarcastic, but Weiss wasn't able to pick up on it because Barb's not that good of an actress.
And Blake is just hanging in the hung herself with the ribbon on her pistol thing or whatever with how bad that joke was.
I just thought it was actually funny because I was like, I'm listening to this and I'm like constantly annoying cat. I was like, Jesus Christ, that is not funny. Do they think this is funny? And then when Barb's like, "Oh, got him," I was like, "Oh wow, they're really going for this bit. They think this is funny." And then when Weiss actually takes the sarcastic compliment extremely serious, is like, "Oh, it's a jape the entire time. Holy shit! You guys are such bad writers in general that you made me think you were doing a bad joke, but you were actually doing a kind of funny joke, and that makes that kind of funny joke actually hilarious."
Yeah, no, it definitely hits. Also there's references to like two other characters, like the Carpenter and the handsome rusted knight. I swear to God, if White Knight gets confirmed this volume, oh boy, oh man.
Yeah, like I was telling y'all before we started recording, just the idea of Jean getting laid at all just astounds me at this point.
I swear to God, my joke prediction of like them coming out of the portal and it's like all 5 girls are pregnant. And it's like I was right. I was only 1/5 right though.
Uh, so yeah, they cross. They do some like world building here where and we get a little more of that later, but how each like piece of the board serves its own purpose and has its own like cast of characters, and the cat is the only one to like be able to go wherever it wants, whenever it wants, which is not very. Yeah, it's Cheshire Cat, but it actually reminded me more of the cat from Coraline that can like just pass between the two worlds whenever it wanted to. Um, and makes me a little curious as to what if anything Little is going to do later on, because Little has now passed through three different areas despite also being natural resident of this world.
Which one's Little again?
The mouse.
Okay.
Stuart
Oh,
Little.
wait, that's right. The mouse has gone outside of the territorial bounds. She should have gotten spawn killed. She should have gotten like teleported or killed by the admin at this point.
Maybe mice have some sort of weird code to them that like makes it so that they can occasionally like glitch out through the invisible border or whatever.
Yeah, they can't. They could just they could bunny hop, out of
Well,
bounds. Yeah. Oh man. I do like how they like hit Ruby with the question like, so what you gonna do with Salem, huh? As the cat's just like asking this question, bluntly, and Ruby is just like got hit on the head of a frickin', Acme anvil from the question.
Yeah, this honestly, that and what happens. I know I'm jumping ahead, but I kind of don't care because I always have to kind of leave early, so I want to make sure I get
Yeah.
this in real quick. Um, and we can jump back to later. But the biggest reason I liked this episode was because of how they handled Ruby, and I know that completely contradicts everything I've said so far as we've reviewed this volume. In my defense, because here's the thing, I actually love Sad Girl Ruby now. Let me explain why. One, I'm stupid. Okay, I'll take responsibility for that. Two, it is out of character for Ruby, so there is that still holds up, which I think Robert and Media pointed out earlier. But I just don't care about that. Three, it's been a long time since the last volume came out, and I forgot that I wanted Sad Girl Ruby actually. And also, I don't really care about this show anymore. I'm only on here to hang out with you guys. Okay. So
that's
with that said, I am actually happy about Sad Girl Ruby because I do remember now. I went back and watched our last podcast again and to remember what I said. I wanted this, and now I remember why. Because the heroes and Ruby, in my opinion, have been going through this entire show way too positively, even when they do kind of get beat down, right? I wanted the last volume to end on a very, very down note, and I wanted them to be up against the wall, and I wanted shit to suck. They needed to be taken down a peg and needed to do everything for themselves, right? And kind of in a way, as much as I still don't love this fantasy world that they're in right now, I still think that's not my favorite, but technically I'm actually getting what I wanted. They could execute it better because I don't understand how Weiss was so down and out at the beginning of this volume. And then she goes through she talks to her mirror self and she's already completely fine. I know they're doing that just to contrast all the other girls with Ruby, but that still doesn't make any sense. Weiss should still be sad. Besides that, I do like how they handled Ruby at least, because in fairness, Ruby really hasn't been an amazing leader. She's been fine, but she hasn't been perfect. Now, a lot of that is the writer's fault for them just kind of autopiloting so many things. But at least they're addressing that and the fact that not everything has worked. She hasn't always made the best decisions. And even if she does make good decisions, it kind of doesn't matter. They're still in a fucking shit position. They're still completely fucked. The other characters kind of won't really admit that, but at least Ruby is admitting that holy shit, we are like colossally fucked right now, and there's nothing I can do about it. Whether or not it's not even that she's like taking fault for it, which I wouldn't agree with that. It's just that doesn't matter what she does, they're fucked, and there's nothing she can do about it. So what is her identity at this point when she cannot lead them out of everything like she always thought she could? And that I really like, because it's not just her being introspective, it's a little bit of the show kind of being introspective, and the writers at least realize, yes, everything is completely fucked, and it's gonna take a lot for them to get out of this. And I like that because it means they understand the gravity of the situation. So I'm very happy about all of that.
Yeah, I think that this scene needed to happen. It calls back to a scene from Volume 2 where they're in Mountain Glen and Dr. Oobleck asked them all why they are a huntress. And
Oh fuck.
they basically give their answers or restate their answers here with a little more wisdom and experience, having experienced loss on at least two big occasions now, to reinform that. But Ruby had like the most simple, purest reasoning in Volume 2. So simple and pure that Oobleck didn't even bother asking her. And now, because she wasn't asked, because she didn't have like a more tangible idea of what a huntress is and what they are supposed to do and what they are able to do, that is leading to her being the one that is kind of on the breaking point and willing to change. I think the scene really needed to happen. I think it really needed. It could have maybe happened earlier. It could have maybe happened in Volume 4 with each one individually as they cope with the loss of Beacon. But it hits a lot harder now because Atlas was much more of a grand team failure.
Yeah.
And now that they
And
know,
very
and now that they
tangible
know,
too.
because in Volume 3 they didn't really know what they were up against. They were just trying to fight the Grim invasion and then the White Fang and then the Atlas getting hacked, and they didn't really know what was going on. They didn't really know about Cinder. They didn't really know about Salem. They really didn't know about Salem. You can make the argument that they didn't really know about Salem until Volume 6. Um, so they have a lot more wisdom and experience now, and so they're able to better inform their decisions, which makes the scene hit a lot harder than it did in Volume 2. What I don't think was necessary was this setup facilitating that. I think you could have very easily had them escape to Shade with everyone else and have this be someone's semblance or someone at Shade Academy psychoanalyzing them, or maybe Salem getting finding them and getting their head and facilitating this scene. Like, there's other ways you could have brought about this scene that, like, as important as the scene is, it doesn't change the fact that this arc is once again going to be accused of being filler.
And that's truly the sad part about this whole volume.
Well,
Is that
I would say, like, if anything, this scene is going to be like the one probably argument against that in that case. It does kind of uh well, that's entirely dependent on how Volume 10 goes, and that's what a year from now, possibly more,
Yeah.
considering the production schedule they've been on. So we're not really going to know until they get back into the thick of things elsewhere, whether or not this actually pans out. Because yes, I think that this scene more is more demonstrative of the uh, writers being self-aware than the weird little cat one. Because what I took from it was like the yes, the writers realize that all of the other characters except Ruby and to an extent kind of Ruby a little bit don't really have any problems anymore. They accidentally wrote those all out. So now they're fine. And hopefully they don't bring up any more bullshit with them ever again to to just like arbitrarily hand them some stuff. Now they've got Ruby. They've given her a somewhat reasonable issue, I guess. That kind of disposes of my previous criticisms of her. uh, kind of like I don't know. Well, that's the thing is that it seems as though in retrospect the writer's self-awareness came at the same time of Ruby's. Not that she's like a self-insert. You can't really self-insert yourself like that, but it's it's kind of like I don't know, an overall writer team insert maybe. I don't know. It's it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to describe it. It's because like I don't the main thing I would say about it though is that just because they're self-aware, okay, now what are they going to do about it? That's the thing. And if they do like I'm willing to bet, because this is something of a somewhat self-contained volume, like even if it's not filler per se, because they had this one scene in it, uh, it's still relatively like closed off from everything else. It may be that by the end of it, Ruby resolves it, and it doesn't get carried over into the outside exactly.
Yeah, that's what would be disappointing. I want this to get carried over into when they get out of here. I I kind of think it will because I don't see what they're going to do in this volume to solve that problem. But you know, who knows? They could disappoint us. They do all the time, in sometimes in ways that we don't even expect.
I
But
mean, to be honest, it should be the thing that we just expect at this point. It's like like I said, just because they're aware of how they did stuff previously doesn't mean that they're gonna like be not even necessarily that they won't capitalize on it properly. They might not even be able to because there's I mean we're looking at this specifically from like the perspective of basically a single character here. But there, as soon as they get back on Remnant, like there's going to be a lot of stuff else going on, probably with a lot of other characters thrown into the mix, like they always did back there, that are going to be like given weirdly large levels of relevance that they don't need, maybe. And so it might be that these guys, that this whole thing just kind of gets kicked by the wayside, regardless.
Yeah, they do the WoW expansion and they forget about all the stuff that happened in the previous WoW expansion.
Yeah, so I think it would be better for all of our sakes if we didn't hold out any hope for anything else.
That's just RWBY in a nutshell, though. We're all used to that. Uh, let's actually talk about the herbalist because this brings up some interesting stuff that harkens back to that weird line that I pointed out when Little was introduced, where like, oh, and to RWBY is your purpose, because everyone here, and we know this now, like everyone in this realm has a purpose, and that purpose is the same as their name. So like, the Red Prince isn't the Red Prince as a title. That's his actual name. He doesn't have another name. That's all he's got. The Curious Cat doesn't have like a another name like the Cheshire Cat did in the Tim Burton version of Alice in Wonderland, where his name was like Gregory or something. Uh, that is all he is. His purpose is to kind of like wander around and ask questions. And the herbalist,
I think the cat just was was they called him Chesh. He was just a Cheshire cat. You're thinking of Absalom, the that's the one I had a different name. Alan Rickman, the butterfly slash caterpillar. That's
oh
the one who had
yeah,
another name.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's right. They called the Cheshire Cat Chester, and then like the Mad Hatter had a name, and I'm blinking on that too. I keep wanting to say Jervis, but that's Jervis Tetch, the Mad Hatter from Batman.
Terrence Hightop, that was his name.
God, that movie was okay, but it was not Wonderland.
No. The sequel was fucking disgustingly bad, though.
Yeah.
There was a sequel to it? What the?
Yes. Yeah, didn't
It was
didn't it have like Sacha Baron Cohen as the Clock King or something?
It made dude, RWBY Volume 5 made more sense than that movie, and I'm not being hyperbolic. That's how bad that second movie was.
I didn't even know they had made that.
Yeah, they did,
There's a
unfortunately.
movie?
Yeah. Oh god, what's it? I think it was called Through the Looking Glass too. Hold on, let me look this up.
It was called The Looking Glass.
More like through the looking ass, am I right?
Yes, you are. You are right. And not a nice shapely ass, like a very deformed, ugly, you know.
Just say it's a flat ass. A disappointing
flat
flat ass.
Hey, we are flat ass respecters here, okay?
I'm
That's the
not.
new. No, it's the new thing. You have to be, unfortunately. I didn't want to either. Trends forced it upon me.
You know what? I'm gonna do more squats just to not have a flat ass. So I'm just
I'm
gonna
not even
mog.
looking
I'm just gonna mog any person with a flat ass. Doesn't matter what their gender is. I'm gonna be like that guy in the meme who's like walking around with like the butt implants. It's as he like photobombs stuff.
So
until
yeah,
your
they
ass is big enough to where you can rest a coffee mug on the top of it. Don't even talk to me.
yeah, I do like the design of the herbalist, and I like that they're doing something, and I'm afraid that if I like put my brain into it, I'm going to figure it out and ruin the rest of the volume for myself. But they're doing something with the names and the purpose and how like down on himself the herbalist is. Like he's supposed to help people, but now he thinks that like helping people is to possibly change them, which might be what happened to. I'm still holding. Well, yeah, that is almost explicitly what happened to the Red Prince. He was the Red King, and after what happened with
Yeah.
Alex, he went to the herbalist, and the herbalist changed him into the Red Prince. They're doing something with the changes and this world, like getting tired, like they're all stuck in these roles, and that's all they know, but it's not like fulfilling them, which is making me again curious about how Little is going to fit into all this. If she's going to fit into all this, they might just completely miss that opportunity. But
Well, she's pretty small. She can fit into a lot of places.
If Little's name is his purpose, he's already fulfilling it.
yeah. Well, Little is the name that RWBY gave her, so um and it's it seems to be reflecting the situation in Remnant where Salem is the bad guy. She's immortal, she's unstoppable, she's the embodiment of like human corruption, that even if she goes away, that's not going to stop people from being dicks. And so the huntresses are never like the huntresses have to keep fighting. Like even if they do find a way to get rid of Salem, even if they find a way to imprison her or whatever, there's still going to be people for the huntresses to fight, and it is like, you know, working is tiring. Working a job and living your life can be tiring at sometimes. That's why you have to take breaks and mental health checks and stuff like that. And
Sometimes you just
that's
get in your
not,
truck after work and you just scream. And you
yeah.
know, maybe you just sometimes you just get in your truck and you sit there for a good 5 minutes, and then you like do a scream, and then you drive home.
And
Yeah.
that seems to be something that RWBY hasn't really considered. And that's part of the reason why she's kind of like teetering on this breaking point. She's all about being this hero and stuff, but she doesn't
I
know that like sometimes the hero loses, sometimes it doesn't matter how strong you are, sometimes you'll get overwhelmed, or like we keep being told that she grew up on all these stories of heroes. She apparently never read a Spider-Man comic, because Spider-Man is all about getting his ass kicked and people dying on his watch, which just keeps adding to his guilt. Every time he starts getting over himself, someone else dies.
Someone shows up with a gun and shoots his girlfriend again.
well,
Yeah.
I think also for Ruby, and this is why I kind of like this timing, even if it was accidental. I'll just throw them a bone this time. I like this timing for Ruby having kind of her breakdown because this was the first time she really like experienced Salem's like destructive power and she couldn't do anything about it. And not only that, somebody she thought was an ally, Ironwood, turned out to, at least, again, they handled it poorly, but turned out to not be an ally. And somebody like Penny, this time she could have, theoretically she was in charge of protecting people like her, and she didn't this time, and everything's gone to shit on her watch. Whereas the last time stuff had gone to shit was Volume 3, when she was just a student. It wasn't really on her watch. If anything, she helped it from going even more to shit, right? But all the volumes since then, Volume 4, they got through what they needed to get through. Volume 5, they technically won, as bullshit as it was. Volume 6, they got through what they needed to get through. Volume 7 was mostly just a setup for Volume 8. And Volume 8, everything went to shit. This is the first time things have actually not worked out for the heroes, and this is why that was the ending I wanted for Volume 8. I was talking about all volume, and that's actually what we got, and this is the first time Ruby's actually had to experience that, which is really a big deal, and I think that's why she's going through it now, whereas she didn't go through it in Volume 4 because technically it wasn't her fucking fault. She could still be optimistic because she could do something about it. Now it's like, well, I did do something about it, and it still went to shit. So is it my fault that it went to shit? That kind of stuff.
I also love how they structured the sequence where like they did a little bit of Weiss, a little bit of Blake, a little bit of Yang, a little bit of Weiss, a little bit of Blake, a little bit, and they kept on. And as soon as they cut back to, I think Weiss was first, and then when they cut back to Weiss again, I'm just gonna double check that. Blake's in the fog. Yang is the first one to see her doppelganger, and then Blake, and then Weiss. And then when it cut back to Blake and then cut back to Yang again, I was like, oh no. Oh, poor Ruby. The only reason why they wouldn't be cutting to her yet is because she's losing this battle with herself.
She's not gonna win. Oh god, I will say this too. Seeing them in their old outfits,
Yeah.
in the new machine, I'm like, okay, this looks good. That was
It's not the first time. The volume 5 character shorts had them all return in their original outfits. But that was a long time ago. So and they've added some polish. They've altered their lighting, and this scene also just looks good. Maybe it's because the background is just a fog effect or a smoke effect, and so the character models are able to like stand out a lot more without the background looking like obviously copy pasted like it did in prior scenes, even in this volume. Um, this volume I think has looked good. Like I'm thinking of this, I'm thinking like some of the other CGI stuff I've seen in anime recently, and I'll honestly take this. And this has a lot smaller budget than a lot of those other shows do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I actually have to, because I've been tried to watch some anime recently, and I watched Bochi the Rock, which I loved, but it had a very Kyoto animation like feel to it, but man, it did not have the animation polish of Kyoto animation. You could really tell like it did not look good in a lot of places. Still a good quality show. Then coming from that and I'm watching Origairu through right now. It's like going to RWBY. It's like, yeah, it's a downgrade, but like not by that much. as I don't love this concept for the volume, but I don't hate the way it looks. I just don't like the concept. It does look actually pretty okay.
I mean, I would say that I'm pro Bocchi the Rock in all respects because she too is a fellow epileptic. Um, but other than that, like I don't know. Yeah, this thing looks okay. I like the way they animate the cat. That's like the only like notable thing that I can really think of that was kind of I'm somewhat like, oh, that's kind of neat eh, visually, but like I don't know. Everything else seemed fine. I guess I don't.
Yeah, but for RWBY, being fine is pretty good. That's my point. I'm not saying it's amazing. It's not top tier shit.
Yeah.
But for RWBY, looking fine is like, all right. I'm not hating the animation or shit like that. So that's good enough for me
Yeah,
for
like-
by their.
Like I just jumped into Chainsaw Man yesterday, and that show goes hard on the animation and just all levels of production. So like, yes, it looks way better than RWBY 99% of the time, but there are scenes in Chainsaw Man that do not look as good as a lot of the stuff in this episode does. There's a lot of like type lip flap where their mouth is open and closed. There's a lot of that going on in some of the scenes in Chainsaw Man that got distracting. But I think that's because a lot of the Japanese studios, when they use CGI, they try to either use it in conjunction with 2D animation or try to use it to emulate 2D animation, and it's not like you see this a lot in Attack on Titan, particularly season 3 when they have like the really big CGI Titans. It's like, man, that looks like you took a PS3 game and dropped it into like a Max Fleischer Superman cartoon. Like that is how just not the same. That's just the juxtaposition you're hitting there.
Well, in terms of like integrating 3D and 2D animation, the only thing I can think of that kind of like did it good was Treasure Planet. Like I don't really. There's probably something else that I'm not thinking about, but like it's it is usually always like at the
A lot
very
of
least a
Disney,
hit.
a lot of stuff Disney was doing in the from like 1987 or whatever through like 2003 2004 had a lot more CGI than you probably think. Like
Oh yeah, well Tarzan had it too as well.
Great Mouse Detective, the entire Clockwork fight scene, that was all CGI.
Oh God, I had no idea about that. Man,
That was the first time that they implemented computer effects into 2D animation.
I always thought the scene from Beauty and the Beast where they pan down across the ballroom as they're dancing looked kind of CG. I could
It
be
is.
wrong.
Yep,
Oh,
that is
oh,
that
yeah,
is CG.
yeah.
But that was like a CG shot with a like kind of 2D panorama. Or am I saying that right?
Panorama.
Yeah.
What are you talking?
panoramic.
Yeah. Yeah, so they that way they can like animate it in 2D while keeping everything like on model.
So I want to say something too to kind of bring us back to the episode. I don't know if y'all like recall this detail, but the Curious Cat did the same thing to the herbalist or whatever you want to call him, Herb. Where he was like, "Here's a little bit of my heart," and then the herbalist was like, "Oh, I feel better now." A part of me thinks that like, is this world dying? Or have they like, is it just stagnant?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to like. I feel like if I actually think out a full theory that it'll
It'll
end
get
up
shot
it,
down
it,
by the
it'll
next
it'll it'll either make too much sense and ruin the series for me, or I'll like get it so stuck in my head that if it ends up being wrong, I'm not going to like what they do. And I don't want to
Look,
like ruin this volume for myself.
hey, if they manage to actually connect this world more meaningfully with Remnant, I'm actually honestly fine with that. Like I said, I don't love the Alice. I don't love how close this to Alice in Wonderland. I think they could have been more creative, or as media said, like this great scene that they had could have been done in Shade Academy or something like that. Whatever. But if they make this volume more connected to Remnant, I'm good with that because we're already here. We might as well make it count a little bit more. I hope, character progression wise, it's already counting for RWBY in a good way. If it means more to the real world after that, then that's good. I'm okay with that if they execute it well.
I don't even know if we're gonna see Alice at all in this volume. Like we're gonna be 50% of the way through.
I feel like
They're gonna if it's gonna be dropped.
so
It's gonna be,
I feel
tomorrow.
like no, I feel like, and I'm just going to say a number. I feel like episode 8. I feel like episode 8 we are going to get a flashback to Alex, and we're just going to get like a montage version of her entire story, and then that'll help like kind of build momentum towards the finale
Escape.
for this season, since we are only getting 10 episodes apparently.
Yeah, I hope they
Yeah.
do only do like a quick flashback with her rather than like waste too much time on that.
I would not be surprised though if they tie like Alex or Alice or whatever her A name is to the main plot. It would not surprise me in the slightest if like she was like one of like Ozpin's and Salem's like 4 daughters. That would
Well,
not
admittedly-
surprise me in the
I
slightest at
doubt
all. Which I
that,
think
but
I think I mentioned that, but I would be like, if that's something I would have to like put $20 on, I'll put $20 on that.
Well, I mean,
yeah, I don't
I'd say
know.
that they've said so little about this place and about her that there's an inordinate number of ways that they could possibly tie it in. Like even retroactively, anything they said about it would
Oh yeah.
probably fit
Yeah,
because they've
like,
been so vague.
and we still have, remember, we still have we still have Salem's resident illusionist on deck, so I could totally see Neo like disguising herself as Alex in order to try to like lead them into a trap or something.
Fuck, that would be perfect. But she'd have to figure that out though. They'd have to like explain how she was able to figure that out.
Well, apparently the only time in any RWBY material where we had a summary of this plot before this volume came out was in the Neo book.
Yeah, but I don't know how to read. I'm illiterate, even though I own your book. So checkmate.
Well,
I bought
I
this
don't
book
read
just
RWBY.
to have it.
Yeah, looks good
I'm
on a
missing a
shelf.
part of my language center.
Yes. But like they can easily be like, oh, she based it off of the picture book or whatever that she had as a kid. But there's so many ways you can do that. Which is why I'm expecting them to
Curious
do
Cat's
something.
like, that's a sussy imposter.
Yeah, well, I feel like that the Curious Cat might not be in that by that point. Or I had forgotten how this episode ends. I just kind of skimmed into that, and I was like, oh, that's kind of fucked. The Curious
the
Cat
worm
just yeets the herbalist into hell.
I thought the herbalist just like phase shifts down into like the ground, or did the
Now
cat do
the
that?
the cat like taps his paw, and then a hole opens up in the ground, and the herbalist just like drops down.
And everyone was
Anyway,
terrified.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
we talked a lot about Ruby and kind of like what her vision means and why it works. Um, let's talk about the other three though, and what this actually means and how much we think it works or doesn't.
I'm annoyed at Weiss's. I have a problem with Weiss's, which is that she shouldn't be feeling this confident. Why did you show her being the one that seemed very upset about a bunch of stuff at the beginning of this volume, and then now she seems to be all fine? What the fuck?
Because
Well, she was talking to
Ice
herself.
Queen because Ice Queendom is canon, and she no, that's not it. But so with Weiss, I think that that she had kind of already made up her mind about this before Volume 8 happened. Like this is again, this is very like on point to what she said in Volume 2. The whole idea like her father wasn't the start of their name. He's not gonna be the end of it. She has like the Schnee legacy to uphold. She doesn't consider Jacques to be part of that legacy. He was like a steward to that legacy, and she's the real deal. So I'm fine with all that. I like the line of like my grandfather was a hero and my father was a villain. That's nice. Jacques did like hand over power to Watts, who then turned off everyone's heaters. That happened. Um, and then he got disintegrated by Ironwood for like no reason. Um, but I don't even think she knows that.
Oh wait, that's right. That did happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm
he
afraid
was stuck in a cell behind the energy field, and Ironwood just grabs the gun and just melts the entire thing.
I'm afraid that that's a very bold statement by Weiss there. How can she possibly claim to continue her family's legacy when she has no boyfriend yet?
It's a work
Real
in
femcell,
progress.
real femcell energy coming off of Weiss, completely in denial. Who will seed her womb? These
Oh
are the
my
real
god.
questions.
Well,
Well, for
you know that they're gonna come
if
up with some sort of
if we're lucky, it's the Rusted
power
Knight.
bullshit that she doesn't need that. Well, hopefully not, but they could definitely do that.
Oh my god, if Weiss like swoons over the Rusted Knight and then the Rusted Knight ends up being Jean, because I have a theory that Jean met the herbalist already, and that
And he got turned.
and that he was down on himself very much like Ruby was, because he has all the reason to be
Always like
down on
that.
himself. He kind of sucks, and that the herbalist turned him into the shining or rusted like glorious awesome hero he always wanted to be. And if Weiss swoons over that and that ends up being the case, this is going to shoot up into my favorite volume. No, but I
It'd
will
be like the
absolutely
perfect
laugh.
bait and switch. It would be perfect like bait and switch, or it'd be even like a good way too of like I don't know, maybe like snapping people like I could definitely see like John like having assimilated to like live in this is like it's like, oh, like I've been broken, the herbalist fixes people. It's like, well, it's like you're no longer John. It hits blunt, passes it. John hits blunt. You're now the Rusted Knight.
Yeah, like
He's like, dude,
I just want to see
that's-
Weiss's reaction in that scenario.
Yeah, Rusted Knights takes off helmet, and it's just like John, and it's just like John, and then it's Rusted Knights John question mark.
Who the hell is Jean? So Winter
Let's
Soldier reference.
Let's be honest. Ruby X Jean is looking less and Lancaster is looking less and less likely all the time.
I know, and it
I
makes me
know.
sad, but
It makes me sad too, but I will settle for, if Rose Garden doesn't happen, I will take Rose Garden not happening for White Knight happening. That is
Oh yeah,
my
I'll take
Faustian
anything
bargain.
over Rose Garden. Fuck Rose Garden. That's fucking evil and it's creepy. And I think
it
that
is
alone,
creepy.
with all of that stuff that's gone on, I think they know. Hopefully, they're not stupid enough to think that Rose Garden's a good idea at
Well,
this
they
point.
they brought
This
it
team,
up with the Curious Cat brought it up. The Curious Cat
Yeah.
brought up how
Oh,
creepy
that's
yeah,
Amusement
exactly.
was.
right.
So,
He did. I forgot about. I knew there was another
Mm.
bit of like that they were doing.
yes,
Yeah, like oh man, that's got
so
some
that's
weird
another thing too.
implications. Ozpin is inside a little boy. Don't think too hard about it.
Yeah, so that's another thing. I think just realizing they think they know that. So I think Rose Garden is just. I mean, I always said it was not going to happen, but I think now we know for sure that's basically impossible.
And now
Look, I'm
Oscar's
gonna
gonna have to talk no jutsu, sail him back into the wedding and back into the marital bed.
Still on that.
look, girl. If you only destroy civilization every 1,000 years instead of every 100 years, then I'll come back with you. How about that?
Uh, so Blake's was fine. This is again, it's something that like I feel like she made her mind up about in like volume 2, and this is just like reaffirming that. I wish we would have gotten this kind of reaffirmation in like volume 6, like have this be part of her like monologue against Adam. Have her be like, no, I want to be the bridge between our species or whatever. Like
Well,
that would have
she
ruffled
probably,
his jammies.
Yeah, that would have
I
been
mean,
great, but here's the thing. You know, they weren't thinking of that at that point. This is all stuff they've come up with more recently. And again, it's better late than never, but they didn't think about this stuff back then. They're coming up with this
But
stuff now.
I think they did because again this is very similar to what she said in
it
volume
was
2.
what she started
I
on.
think they dropped that. Like I think that might have originally been part of the game plan, but they dropped that when they decided to double down on the vindictive ex-boyfriend angle for Adam.
Yeah,
Maybe.
they went a bad direction with that. They kind of dropped it. It gets brought up as like it gets brought up as like fluff pieces in the later volumes after that. But
It
I
doesn't come up at all after volume
yeah
6. Volume 6 is the last time anyone like even really acknowledges that she's a faunus outside of like lip
yeah
service. Like
yeah, and then
no one, not like none of the Aesops, Ironwood, Winter, Penny, like nobody that they meet in Atlas has any kind of issue with Blake's ears.
and at this point when like an entire civilization has been destroyed, they're they- they'll probably wind up finding themselves in a desert swarming with like the same stuff that just destroyed the previous one. I doubt it's going to come up again. They kind of wasted all the opportunities on it. It's not
Yeah. Yeah,
best. We're gonna
Atlas was the best opportunity because that's the one that had like the implications in earlier volumes of like there being slave labor, but it turns out that that slave labor wasn't even like species specific because there were humans and faunus in the mine carts in the beginning of volume 7.
yeah. The best thing we're gonna do in regards to her is probably like there's gonna be an end credits scene with d- freaking Don't You Forget About Me playing in the background, where it shows a picture of her and then has like some words like, and then later on, Blake went to uh, declare the Faunus Amnesty Council or something, which immediately got rid of all discrimination in the world after they won.
Yeah. Um, and then we also got Yang's, which I liked, but I think it had the least amount of like callback stuff in it because a lot of this is calling back to Volume 2, which happened before Yang lost her arm. Um, and so the thing that the herbalist is tempting her with is to like be quote whole again, basically get her arm back, and she comes to the conclusion that like no, like these no, you don't get it. Blake really likes this arm. uh, but no,
The same shit.
the her scars or whatever, like she does feel whole and she doesn't want to forget that. She doesn't want to forget the like defeat and stuff. She wants to keep growing and stuff, which is very unlike like it made it. She's the one who, if you just take the volume 2 stuff and then jump to this, she's the one who seemingly has gone through the most development. And therein lies the problem because she hasn't really.
Well, yeah, she had a dip and then came back to the same place. This is that's like kind of like what I was thinking of in regards to fucking Weiss, but in a different way. Like Weiss, like basically had to play the same arc on repeat, on loop the entire series. Yang had uh, an upside down arc, I guess, where it was just like, I'm going to be depressed for a little while because I lost my arm. But, and forget that, I'm just going to be the exact same person I was before. And,
Now, I think, I've gone on record saying I think the PTSD stuff was done fine. I still think that, but like PTSD isn't the only effect of a traumatic experience, and Yang, a lot of what undercuts the stuff for Yang is the fact that she has treated her disability like a joke so often. Like in Volume 5 with trying to arm wrestle Nora and then using the rocket punch to send Nora flying because get it, her arm isn't even attached.
okay, to be fair, I do that all the time with my disability. The number of seizure jokes I've made, I
Yes, that is
you would
true. This
need
is
like,
true. Oh my
but I
god!
mean, like,
Like remember the podcast we did on Rise of Skywalker? That's one
I
of
don't
my
even think I
favorite.
was on that podcast.
I don't know if you were either. It's one of my favorite Coop moments because he was like, yes, if you are like me and have half your brain missing, you will like this movie.
See, I'm just remembering now too. What was it like? We got derailed whenever I sent you like the image of like the bad like translations from like the second
Yes, the
Star.
careful, he is a big. He's
I
coming
gotta
in
rewind it.
behind.
Damn.
It doesn't beat the best podcast moment of all time.
No,
Do you guys
that
know what I'm talking about?
my favorite is when
When I insulted the writers because I said they were from Texas, so that made them stupid, and High Powered cocks his actual pistol and so don't take
yes.
offense
Yes,
to that.
grabs real
That
gun
one I was
and
gonna
excites
say.
you.
Yes, I was gonna say that when High Powered actually pulled out his gun on the podcast. We've had some fun times. This whole
I had, like,
this
that's
whole
why I'm
thing
so
has me
here.
feeling all nostalgic, and that's just kind of
Yeah.
the nature of this scene and seeing the volume 7 outfits next to the volume 1 outfits, or yeah, the volume 1 outfits. For some reason I was thinking Yang was in her volume 4 outfit, but it's just because she has the same color palette. um Whereas Weiss and Blake have changed their color palettes. uh yeah, like I still like, I dug all 4 little bits of this section. Again, this is just like, this is why I watch shonen series, and this is why I read comics. Like this sort of operatic storytelling, because this is very operatic. This is very much what you would see in like a stage play, or like a Greek tragedy, or a pulp novel, or a comic book. It is kind of like that level of ready. I feel like, I don't know if RWBY still has the young demographic that it did 6-7 years ago. I don't know if there are still like little kids who are finding RWBY for the first time, and watching the entire thing and then keeping up with it as little kids. I don't know. I know that was the case when RWBY first started, but if that is the case, I feel like this is going to influence a lot of decent writing habits in that demographic.
Maybe, I'm not sure. I'd have to I'd have to see some numbers in regards to that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, with this volume in particular, we're never gonna get that because it's like behind a paywall now, and so even if Crunchyroll were to disclose like their user base, there would still be no telling how many people are watching it as a group, how many of those groups are like parents turning it on for their kids. There's no real way of ever knowing about that. Like the main reason why I even know that it had a young demographic at some point is because uh a lot of parents were like complaining sometime around volume 3. Like, I think it was when Yang broke Mercury's leg. A lot of like enough parents called to complain to where they put like a viewer discretion on when RWBY returned after like a little hiatus after that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, we, if I haven't really heard of anyone showing their kids RWBY. If you have like older kids, if you have like kids who are 10, 11, 12, I think that is a good enough demographic for this material, and I think this episode
Probably.
in particular would be decent for them.
I don't know. I don't know what kids these days are into. I'm an old man, damn it.
Yeah.
Who?
I
But
also
here's a
feel like, oh, you go ahead.
Who thought that the writers, the people who brought us Red versus fucking Blue, were going to make a kid show? I mean, come
I
on.
don't think they did at first, because I think that when Volume 1 started, its main demographic were like, people who are going into college and starting to have kids. So by the
and
time
watch
Volume
anime.
3 so by the time Volume 3 started, they're like, "Oh yeah, RWBY, that's pretty, family friendly. Let's put that on." And then Volume 3 got way darker than Volumes 1 or 2 did, and so that was the tonal whiplash.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I'm not sure if I actually mind or not, because there's definitely parts of RWBY that I feel like would have been improved if they made it a bit more adult oriented. You know what I mean? Like if they just address the fact, like, again, the fact that none of these people have even shown any signs of getting together is unbelievably ridiculous, not only with their actual age based off of our own world, but also the fact that in their own world, everybody's dying every 5 seconds, and their parents are all very, very young. So that makes absolutely no goddamn sense whatsoever. But there's also parts where it's like, I could easily see them doing some too much bullshit CW melodrama crap if they made it a bit more adult oriented. So overall, I'm gonna not complain too much. Although there was that one line where Nora said, like, "Q just needs to go down," and she really needed to cuss there. I'll always go back. That was volume 5, by the way. Of course, that was one of the dumbest lines. But other
Mm.
than that, it's like, I mean, they could have. There's probably more chances of things going worse if they made it more adult oriented, I think.
I feel like it would have like a sort of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer vibe to it in that way. Like, I'm not.
I mean, like most young adult novels have had like stuff that's happened in this series happened in them and then some. So
Yes, but
like,
also remember most young adult novels should be labeled young girls novels, so it's deliberately kind of trying to be smut for children.
Eh, some of it,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true. I mean,
I
look at
just
Twilight.
I've
Yeah,
seen
exactly.
I've just seen a lot of people on Twitter really praise the scene and say that like they related to one thing or the other. Like I've seen a lot of people who have like physical disabilities or whatever really resonate with Yang. People who are of like mixed race or have experienced racism really resonating with what Blake said. The people who grew up in abusive families resonating with what Weiss says. And there's one person I saw in particular who was resonating with what Ruby said because there's the whole idea like, oh, children are the future, and passing the buck, so to speak. The raise the next generation right. They'll fix all the problems, and then this is what happens. The world just beats them down, and then they become part of the problem instead of fixing it. Um, and that's just good writing for me. Like I can't knock anyone who like relates to something even if it is unintentional. Um, like there's another one. I think it was some like trans YouTuber or whatever was praising the Blake stuff as well, or I can't remember. I kind of skimmed past that one, but just people will. It kind of goes to show that a character or plot beat doesn't have to be one to one what you've experienced in your life in order to yeah, there I just found the tweet again because I knew it was posted in another server, but it was someone resonating with what Blake said. Like it just goes to show that a character or plot beat doesn't have to be one to one with what you've experienced in your life for you to like latch on to it and relate to it and put that into your personal like core group of scenes that like help you articulate how you feel about yourself. And I like stuff like that. And I like it when people speak up about stuff like that too. Doesn't matter how much I might disagree with them otherwise.
Hmm. I mean, it's I don't know. I don't really I never understood the entire idea of relating to something. Like you know, I don't use scenes from books I like to describe my life. I just tell you what happened to me. Like it seems like excess steps for something that can be reached more directly in
Yeah.
my eyes, and I just don't
Well,
I
Yeah,
don't like
I
so
agree.
some people have trouble self actualizing, and it's an autism thing. Um, a lot of
it.
times I've seen it within you know people who are on the spectrum. I see kind of latch onto those kinds of ideas, and as someone who has worked with special needs kids and has gone to school for special education and stuff, I'm very aware of all that stuff.
Yeah,
How
no,
many
I
of
mean,
them went into
I
training?
The
I
what
sort of
now?
agree with Coop in that I sort of agree with Coop in that I don't really relate. I don't really relate to people relating to stuff either. The only thing I can ever think of where I like where I pointed at it and was like, oh, I relate to that. It's literally Kaon and Bochi the Rock, just because it is so fucking rare for anybody to actually represent music like and bands in any form of accuracy. And even though Kaon got a lot of stuff wrong, it did get the vibe of like hanging out with your band and forming a band in high school together vibe really fucking accurate, and how half of what you do is just hang out with your
Mm-hmm.
friends. That was
Yeah.
literally my life in a band in high school. And also with Bochi the Rock, like how they actually approach like stage fright and getting things correct for like how you have to play in a band. You can't just be good by yourself. You actually have to learn how to play in a band. Now, I actually don't relate to Bocchi at all because I was not a nervous wreck, and I actually naturally adapted to playing to it with a band very, very well. But I like that they had that. But other than that, I've literally never like thought like I've related to anything in like a TV show or a movie before. I just like it. But I can
Yeah.
appreciate that other people
Yeah,
need that
it's
or
it's
that it helps
very
them or them there.
it's very
Well,
rare for me too. Like there's only a handful I can think of where like, oh yeah, that's that hits a little close to home.
yeah. I mean, the only thing that I can really apply to myself is the Count of Monte Cristo, because I too was unlawfully imprisoned in a secret French prison island for attempting to aid in the reestablishment of the Bonaparte dynasty. It's really crazy how those two things lined up like that.
uh Anyway, so are we ready for questions? Because I think we covered everything that
Yeah, let's
this
do
that
some
this episode
questions.
had. Uh, so Metric asked, which member of Team RWBY is the best thumb wrestler?
Yang, the fucking
Yang.
robot arm. Come on.
Yang would be disqualified from official thumb wrestling competitions for using a prosthesis that aided her in thumb wrestling. The answer would be Blake, because cats don't have thumbs, so she would have articulation in it as a human, half cat that could not be predictable.
I hate that actually made sense as an explanation. God damn it, Coop. Devin did not ask a question, but he commented on the question page anyway. GQ Smith asked two questions. Do you think the show calling out some of its complaints is a bad thing? Not the way it was used here. I think we kind of came to
We
that
definitely covered
conclusion.
it.
Yeah, and then he also asked if Jean and Neo went through the hallucinations as well. What do we think about that possibility? Jean, yes. Neo, no, because we kind of already saw Neo touching down last episode, and so we kind of like know that she didn't land in the herbalist's area, and so she'd have to kind of find her way there first. Um, uh, yeah, we kind of already did that with like the rest of the night and stuff. Crystal Tiger 17 asked, "Do you think Rooster Teeth will be able to finish RWBY or stop before taking down Salem?" Yes, I do actually.
Yeah, they'll somehow with a shoestring budget, this series will end, even if it's
They,
on a shoestring budget.
they kept Red versus Blue going long after they shouldn't have anymore. So yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, they'll find a way. It's like they're the only thing that's making them money, I think. I forgot they're even a company anymore. I mean, even the team that makes Ruby isn't even all part of Rooster Teeth anymore, right? It's fucking all
yeah,
gone down.
yeah, yeah. Like I know Miles is freelance now. I know Aaron's been freelance since like Volume 3, I think. Uh, Maybe even earlier than that. But you know, worst case scenario, like the most drastic thing that could happen is like Warner Discovery deciding to shut Rooster Teeth down and mothball all of RWBY, because those sorts of business decisions take time to go into effect. They will throw together just a final volume, and because the show is so loosey goosey and all over the place anyway, they could easily wrap up the entire thing in one more volume. Like they've
Oh
always
yeah.
kind of structured the show to be, with the exception of the way Volume 8 ended, they've always structured this show to be like just one batshit volume away from wrapping up. Like it could be, they could end it at Volume 10, they could end it at Volume 11. They will keep this plot line going as long as they want to, and they could wrap it up whenever they want to, because they've had plenty of missed opportunities. They've dropped plenty of plot points before. Why would we expect the final volume to be any different?
I mean, if anything, they put so many into place that the final volume kind of can't be different at this point. Like,
Yeah, Ruby is at a point where she doesn't have hope because she doesn't see an end in sight. She sees like, oh, even if I get out of here, even if we fight Salem, even if we thwart Salem's plan and get all the relics back, she's still going to be alive. We're still going to have to fight her, and eventually I'm going to have to die like my mom did. Like, that's haunting. That's kind of haunting.
Could you
That's a
imagine if
haunting
that's what
thought.
they actually did? If this show was a tragedy the entire time? Oh my god, I would take back every.
I would
I
actually
ever
love
said
if Ruby
about
dies at the end. I would actually
If
like
Ruby
that.
dies at the end, this
Oh,
show goes from a fucking 4 out of 10 to a fucking 9 out of 10. I don't even
it'd be
care what they do with Renora or all the fucked up shit they do with Ironwood, how they fucked up Blake,
be
how they fucked up
perfect.
Yang. I don't care.
It'd be
Fucking 10
perfect.
out of 10 if Ruby dies. If that's what this arc is going towards, I would love that. That would be so fucking good.
Yeah.
Or even, honestly, even if she goes into the fight with Salem believing she's gonna die, and they basically pull some like Harry Potter bullshit on us, that would still bring it up from a 4 out of 10 to like a 7 out of 10, honestly.
Yeah,
Not
like
kidding.
the reason why that worked in Harry Potter is because Harry didn't know.
Bleak, no fucks given. I don't care anymore. Broken down Ruby. If that's what they were building her character this entire time, oh my god, mind blown. Please do that. I will take back every bad thing I ever said about the writers. Yeah.
It was all just a long con. They wanted you to hate the show and the characters so that they could kill them all off.
If Ruby was a tragedy all along, and all of her hope and all of this shit was just leading to her going, like, breaking down and just giving up, and oh my, that would be so good. Holy shit, I would love that.
Dark. That would be way darker than I think the show is gonna go.
I don't think that would happen. I also kind of
No, I don't either.
Really, I don't really want it to happen either. I feel like the best conclusion that Ruby could come to is that she can't always beat Salem, but like she could at the very least build up a society that can keep her at bay constantly throughout eternity.
And I think that's what Ozpin tried to do and failed because he hinged their entire communications network on everything functioning all at the same all in perpetuity forever at the same time. No hiccups, no HBO going out. HBO goes out, everything goes out. Yeah, good idea, Oz. Good idea.
There are various ways that you can set up a better system of comm towers.
Yeah, like the one we don't even need satellites to fix that issue. Just have redundancy programs. That's why we have like backup power generators and stuff, so that if something happens and one goes offline, the whole system isn't taken down.
Are you telling me that Ozpin never contacted the Department of Redundancy Department?
I'm just.
No, he saw the. No, look, he saw
I don't know what
quote
that's
from,
from, but that's a good one.
Oh, it's just a joke. It's just the Department of Redundancy Department. It's because it's redundant.
Yeah.
Hey, he just saw the quote from the contractor, and he's like, "Look, I may be an all-knowing, intelligent dude who's had multiple lifespans, but even that's outside of my budget."
I mean, to be fair, all the prior civilizations he had created might not have gotten up to wireless communications technology, so he might not have really thought of how you should have it work yet.
Yeah, he didn't have like a domestic terrorist just to tell him like how he would just destroy the systems like with them. Like he should have like had somebody like that captured.
It doesn't even have to all be wireless. We've got cables going all through the bottom of our oceans, and that's working for us.
The Grimshark are like, my favorite snack.
Well, Remnant never developed cables. Okay, when there's no wires anywhere there that I've ever seen. that weren't part of robots.
I must
So-
resist making a joke. I have to resist making
No,
a
you
joke.
don't. Say it.
I'm not going to say the
Say it.
joke. I will say it after we get off.
This is a really, really good joke, guys. You don't know what you're missing out on. Trust me.
Stereotypical gamer asked, is it really worth it in regards to Yang's character development? He prefaced his question by answering his question before he asked it. So I'm not gonna really dignify that with kind of the honest response. But yes, I actually do think, character development is always worth it, even if it is kind of circular.
Well, it's not circular for RWBY, I don't think, so at least we've got that going for us.
Yeah.
Character progression is never failing.
Yeah,
Not
well,
That's why,
failing yet,
if you look
anyway.
at the Airbender, there is technically not a single episode of film season in that series. Because even again, Ember Island players, there's character. It's technically a plot in certain ways. So yeah, there's you can definitely. And that's the thing. I think one of the issues with the audience of this show, because I haven't ragged on the audience in a while. You don't need to have action for it to not be filler. Okay, you can have much calmer stuff, more introspective stuff happen and it not be filler. My issue with this volume is not that I think it's literally going to be filler. I think they will always think they're getting something done. It's just that I don't like the concept. And again, I liking the execution now, so I don't really have a problem as much anymore. But it doesn't make it filler.
yeah. My thing is this comes from many years ago. I watched it was a Captain Logan video. He was actually talking about Arkham Asylum, but he went on this aside about Batman and a lot of comic book characters in general, where like a good story doesn't have to have a character who changes. It just has to give them the opportunity to change. And this was like the most on the nose. I have the power to literally change you. uh, and I am making you an offer. So, like, even if it is just reaffirming Weiss, Blake, and Yang and tempting RWBY, but RWBY not having the opportunity to actually fall into that temptation, or fall to that temptation, rather. Uh, the opportunity was still there. And that's what makes good like writing. Like the opportunity to change, even if the character doesn't change, is necessary for a story.
Well, I would say that kind of it applies to a certain kind of story more, and I would say that is good for like if you want to do like a short character study type thing. If you're trying to put together like some kind of epic, uh, like RWBY clearly is attempting to do, you go back to the first two examples. You either do it Iliad style, where you present that change as a possibility, and then have it reach a tragic end for not changing, or you do it Odyssey style, where the change is enforced upon you, and you have to take it, and you eventually reach the comedic end because you took it. Uh, but like I think the idea of doing it like the short character study where it's like I don't take the change and I also didn't need to take the change because I get a happy ending out of it anyway, is like I said, that's better for if you're doing something like a little bit shorter, probably.
Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts on that before we move on?
I think I covered whatever we were talking about that
So,
bit during.
Rob Careau asked, did they all, besides Ruby, really overcome their individual struggles? Yeah. I mean, apparently, like
I mean,
the thing about temptation is that could always be there. Um, they might change. The characters are open to changing their mind, but as far as Weiss, Blake, and Yang goes, like, I don't really see any other opportunity to, like, for them to go back on this. Like, they kind of made up their mind.
Well, they
I
didn't
don't
really.
think. I think at this point they don't really need to. They, like I said, there's so many characters in the show. They still have to do the progression with Ruby. They still have to fix Jean, and let's be honest, they do have to address Renora. So there's 3 things they got to do, and especially the Ruby and Jean characters. They definitely have to still work on them.
I
So
mean,
I know
two out of
I
the
had Ruby in there, but they definitely those 2 are characters that they haven't resolved them. So they have to resolve their arc and Jean and Ruby. So you don't need any more with the.
yeah, I mean, well, like I said before, they had resolved all the others previously. It was uh like I am glad that they didn't bring up a new problem only to have them like resolve it again, or the same problems as before only to have them resolve it again. And they're just like, nah, everything's fine. We admit it now. We we already we already dealt with all these. That's cool. And as far as like the other characters' problems being like 3 out of 4 of those characters aren't even the main characters. And they're going to be like 3/4 of the unresolved issues left. It's kind of like, and they didn't map out the planning of this whole thing very well. But what can you do? It,
Obviously, they didn't. We already talked about how the only one who's gone through decent character progression is Weiss, and even hers, they didn't fucking pace it properly. Blake's and Yang's character progression was terrible.
Yeah. Thor G1058 asked, which character had the best and worst written speech against their doppelganger? Against their doppelganger, so I guess we're, writing off Ruby for this. Because that was the one that definitely hit the hardest. Because of how much it juxtaposed with the other 3. But barring that, I I think Weiss's resonated with me the most. I don't know if that was the best one. We obviously brought up, problems with it. But just, as far as what I've gone through in my life and what I've gone through even, fairly recently, Weiss's resonated with me in a way that Blake's and Yang's just never could, really.
I mean, I don't know. Like,
Go ahead, Coop.
I'd say that probably if I had to, it, if we are picking it on relatability, I unfortunately have to relate the most with Yang, which I constantly hate. But fucking like,
You can use whatever criteria you want.
oh, okay. Well, I mean, like in terms of well, honestly, I don't really like any of them except for Ruby's. Like the 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 sort of like I don't know, the weirdly bold, self-confident, prosaic style getting like fed to you on repeat like 3 times, and having basically like the more or less like the not even like they weren't the same responses, but each of the responses had the same mood to it.
Yeah.
Like
That does bring up something, you know. I'm glad that it did keep kind of cutting back and forth between the 3, because if we just saw all of Weiss's speech and then all of Blake's speech and then all of Yang's speech, that would have been exhausting. That would have been
it
annoying.
would like it overstates welcome.
Yeah. Even though it would have been the same length, it would have been the same amount of time, having it go back and forth, like kind of kept the momentum going. Whereas had it been like one at a time, we would have seen it and then be like, okay, this is just what's happening, and then clock out for the next 3 minutes.
And I get it was all part of the same scene, and so they kind of had to have it be the same mood and all take kind of like have the same vibe to it. But I don't know. You got like three different girls with three different, well, allegedly different personalities, quote unquote. Uh, I I just kind of want like you know uh their soliloquy to have like this is like an internal monologue to themselves, basically. I would like to see it have like a different mood between all of them. Like,
Yeah, apparently, no, I don't pay attention to the Ruby Twitter. Um, but apparently, like the idea of the scene came from like Miles being like, or someone asking them like, what would you, if you could talk to yourself from 5 years ago, what would you say? And this is like
what would I say?
the
I'd say don't
basis.
join the Marines. You'd get your brain damaged. Not in the way you think either.
Yeah, I don't know what I would say
I'd be
to
like, buy
my
Bitcoin
5-year-olds.
and sell it at like $60,000.
That too.
Bet it all on Biden.
It's
uh,
all
So
going.
so I think for this scene, obviously Ruby's was the best one. But other than that, I would go personally with Weiss's because I don't really relate to any of them. But Weiss has earned her character arc the most out of everybody, so I feel like she's earned the right to be more confident and defiant versus the other girls.
she
Yeah, she's earned
she's
it like
she's
three separate
earned
times.
Yeah, she's earned the catharsis. She never had the moment of stabbing Adam and watching him tumble off a cliff like Blake and Yang did. So
I mean, was that really even Yang's catharsis? Like,
And
what is Yang catharting over?
yeah,
Like,
that's the thing. I don't really understand
losing
why
her
she even needs
arm.
it, but I mean, she gets it because she's one of the characters, okay?
Yeah,
And I was gonna say I wanted to add to earlier, and I couldn't say it because there was a cop around, so I had to put my phone down. But I don't think that Blake or Yang have earned their character progression, and their character progression hasn't been done extremely all that well. In both cases, actually been done really shitty. But I would rather them not try to do it again because that would be even worse. So just leave it where it is. Let's because I know Jean's not technically a main character, but he's basically a main character enough. He
oh,
deserves to be solved a
oh
bit
my God,
more.
I forgot Yang's entire like mystery parent theater arc. Holy shit, I forgot all about how they failed to cash in on Yang's mom.
Yeah, no, they really did forget that. I think this part,
They didn't
if
even
they
bring it
had
up
other
during this.
people there, instead of it being themselves, it was other people there, like asking them questions. I feel that would have worked better.
I feel
I
like
mean,
you
it
could I
works
feel like you could have
currently.
done I feel like you could have done both.
Yeah, I think both work good. It's like, okay, it's like, do you like chocolate or do you like vanilla or like strawberry or whatever?
You put
Yeah, but
all that together, you get Neo. It all comes back to her.
Oh yes, and it all circles back to her. Neo's the
She is the
key to
key.
defeating Salem.
She's the key to all of it. She's like Jar Jar from Force Awakens or
Neo's the
Phantom
walking Kali
Menace.
Yuga.
yeah, yeah, probably. She's
God, that reminds me of like you going back and talk. Like, you go back and I've watched the prequels and sequels again. It's like I'm
why.
sorry, people. The sequels are shit, but the prequels are every bit as bad of movies, if not worse, in terms of if you take them both out of being Star Wars films, they're so fucking awful. And it reminds me of when I watched the review by it was a cosmonaut. He was like, "Yeah, Jar Jar is annoying, but if you actually take him out of Phantom Menace, it's actually kind of worse." And I watched it in that context, and he's actually fucking right. Jar Jar is actually semi-important to the fucking plot. I think it gets even more confusing if you don't have him.
Yeah,
That's how
he
bad those
really
movies.
is the key to all this.
Yeah.
And I'm not just memeing. I'm not just doing the Darth Jar Jar meme. Okay, he
But
actually
no,
is.
that was a George Lucas quote behind the scenes.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
He
that
is
goes back
the
to like a concern that George Lucas had, where he was like, you know, he wasn't very confident in Jar Jar. He wasn't. He thought he might have gone too far, but he was surrounded by a bunch of yes men, so nobody checked him. Like that's something that they could have easily checked him on, but they didn't. Um, and he was like, Jar Jar is the key to all this. If I could get Jar Jar to work, the entire movie will work, and it will be awesome. And if I don't get Jar Jar to work, people are going to hate this. Well, guess what happened?
I mean, I
uh,
don't really. I think Jar Jar is a pretty superficial reason to dislike the prequels. I don't
it
like them.
is.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. There's so much else fucking wrong with that movie. Oh my god.
As a prequel apologist myself, yeah, they got some issues. They got a lot of
I
issues.
I
Well,
still
you know
hate
what?
episode. I still hate Attack of the Clones even more, actually, because it's more boring to me. Even if episode one is more pointless, it's to me more fun than episode two. Episode two is nothing about that movie is entertaining to me at all. Even except for maybe the last fight scene where all the Jedi get fucking wasted in the pit or whatever. That's it. Other
This
than
would
that,
be a good time to plug our series of Star Wars podcasts we did a few years ago. But I ain't gonna put the annotation in because I'm not gonna listen to this podcast 3 to 4 times to check everything. I don't have that much time. Uh, maybe
I'm,
I'll just put a link in the description below. But
it's
yeah,
probably a good
we
idea.
talked about that at length. Those were fun times. Uh, but that was the last of the questions. So thank you all for watching. Uh, check out my book, The Hellfire Brass, available now on Amazon and elsewhere. Book 2, The Nephilim Strain, coming this summer. I also have a Substack and a YouTube channel that you could like, comment, and subscribe to. And the, yeah, join the Discord, hang out, let us know what you think of stuff. See ya.